morning, good afternoon, good evening, or Sui, I'm going to bed already. This is Eagle Eyes on Tech. I am Eagle Falcon. So we go from last week, where really the only big tech news was the whole ransomware attack, which has pretty much played its course. Although, Lord knows, there was a lot more that happened after we reported on it. And then this week, there's too much. I handpicked out the stuff that I really want to talk about, but there's a whole lot of Google I.O. news. Probably going to have to put that off until next week. We'll get to a little bit of it. Like, the YouTube announcement that was part of Google I.O. And that is... what was it called? Oh yeah, Google's Super Chat. What Google's Super Chat is it's a feature now within YouTube live streaming that allows someone to pay an amount of money, whatever they want. It's basically a donation, and have have their line of chat show up prominently in the stream. Anyone who's familiar with any form of video game live streaming has heard of this. It has existed since the dawn of time. For the longest time, ever since the dawn of Twitch alerts, people have been donating to live streamers, and then their message gets read by the streamer live on chat. That's now taken to a new level in Twitch with the introduction of cheers. The fact that YouTube is doing something very similar it's no surprise. The only thing I'm curious about is what the split is, and unfortunately, there's too many conflicting reports to get a number I'm comfortable reporting on. The thing that gets me, though, is if you look at the live stream, you already see the headline that caught my eye. This is from the-verge. The-verge's headline on this is, YouTube's paid chats are an abomination from a capitalist dystopia I want no part of. The subtitle being, the content of live streams shouldn't be dictated by money. That's a nice thought and all, but I want to know where this guy has been for the last 5 years. 4 years, or however long live streaming has existed and slowly taken over Let's Plays as far as video game content. Tips, donations, and paid chat messages have existed since ever. It has been there since forever. And the subtitle of the content of live streams shouldn't be dictated by money. A good chunk of live streams are, in fact, challenge runs in which they have to complete additional challenges as people donate to a charity. What live streams has this guy been seeing? This guy, Vlad Savov, from The-Verge. I'm not sure if he's just watching Markiplier over on the Let's Plays area of YouTube and assuming it's live content. But that's how live content has been since the dawn of Twitch, and ever since YouTube tried to compete with Twitch. But, alright, how bad could it be? How bad could this entire article be? This article actually is so bad. It does deserve, despite the fact I have so much I could talk about. How bad could the article be? It reads, if YouTube comments stink, and they do, then YouTube live stream chats are positively radioactive in their toxicity. You can pick the most innocent of topics, like, say, kittens napping in a wicker basket on a sunny day, and it won't take long for you to find a prodigiously president troll spamming chat with a Nazi insignia, racist abuse, or anything else designed to shock and offend the greatest number of people. Let me interject. Where the heck is this guy? Anyone who knows anything about how live stream chats work knows that any of that sort of stuff is then immediately timed out, deleted, or straight up banned by moderators. And that's not just something that exists on Twitch. That exists on every live streaming service ever, YouTube included. If you're in a chat that's allowing that, it's because there's no moderators moderating that. The article continues. So yes, YouTube chat needs a remedy. But Google's super chat idea is the worst possible solution to the problem. Let me interject. That's not the solution. Does this guy not even understand what the point of super chat is? It is clearly a competitor to the cheer. It is clearly the competitor to Twitch alerts. It is exactly how it's broadcasted. That's exactly how, not how it was broadcasted. That's exactly how it was announced at Google I.O. Was that you could buy a super chat and have it affect the stream. It's Twitch alerts. It's basically Twitch alerts for YouTube. Now YouTube takes it a step further and says, okay, you could use your super chat to change the color of a light bulb on the stream if you really wanted to, if the streamer set that up. But that's really the only difference between super chat and cheers. The guy has clearly done no research. No effort goes in this at all. But, you know, let's be fair. Maybe there's something redeeming in all this. The article continues. What is Super Chat? It's a method to amplify the visibility of your chat message on a live stream by making it larger, giving it some color, and pinning it atop the chat window for a period of time. Oh, and it costs you money. That's right. In Google's vision of the future, you get the special privilege of paying to be noticed. Let me interject. I hate to break it to this guy, but once again, it wasn't Google's vision. Almost everything that was just described, Twitch did first. The only difference is changing the font and whatever of the message. Otherwise, it is exactly like Cheers. And here's the thing. He's saying it like this is all just a bad thing. if someone wants to pay to have a message be more visible and then support the streamer as a result of that, why not? It isn't like a paid chat. It's not like you have to pay in order to be heard. You can still be heard unless there's 30,000 people in the chat room, in which case there's a pretty good chance, even with Super Chat, that the streamer's still not going to notice, because, come on, 30,000 people? That's, yeah. And then Yuxi does say, or the charity. Anytime I say supporting the streamer, it can also support a charity, because streamers do support charities as well. They do what's called charity streams. But, alright, let's see if the guy actually gets to a good point. The article continues. Got something clever to say? Better shake out a few shekels from your coin purse to make sure your fellow viewers note and appreciate your incisive wit. Want your favorite YouTuber to know you're supporting them in their artistic endeavors? Pay up and they will feel the warm glow of your appreciation. My God. I can't even read it anymore. It's so full of stupidity, anger about the whole thing. I just don't... What does the guy expect the streamers to do then? Do it only as a hobby? To only stream, make no money ever, and just always have another job? I mean, I do this, whether it be the gaming streams or this podcast right now. I do it all as a hobby. It obviously is, but it's still a lot of time, a lot of effort that is put into making this content. For this 1 hour podcast, I did 3 hours of research. Now, I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes you do just find a gem. Like just looking up YouTube Super Chat and finding this Verge article as the second list. And just going, oh man, I have to include this, and then just ravage it. It's too easy. I really want to know what this guy thinks should be the only way that streamers should go and actually earn a living if they do this for a living. I really do want to hear from this guy as far as what they should do. This is just another way for them to earn money. And Lord knows, in the current YouTube model of, oh, I'm sorry, you accidentally did this or that for 8 whole seconds and now it's copyrighted, and now you earn no ad revenue. Period. On the whole thing. I can vouch for that. That happened to me countless times. But of course, and I'm not even going to bother reading the whole rest of the article. This just goes on. But he basically compares this whole thing to what live porn cams work. Now, he finally does in the article, just kind of glancing through, second to last Here's the last two paragraphs. Let's see how he justifies this. As with most streaming things, Twitch is ahead of YouTube on this. You can already pay money for Twitch's animated cheers, which directs some revenue towards the streamer you follow. Some? Okay. When you say some, normally the term less than half works for you. But in the case of Cheers, 71%, at least 71% of the Cheer revenue goes to the streamer. The overwhelming majority of it goes to the streamer. Or if you want more prominence for your comment, a super chat, you can donate some money and have your comment displayed over an overlay on the stream. The underlying premise for both Twitch and YouTube is that you're supporting the creator and your favorite online content. YouTube, however, is fundamentally different from Twitch. It's vastly larger and more influential, and its users are not a monoculture of gaming fans. People do a much wider of... What the hell is this guy talking about? Has he not looked at Twitch Creative? Twitch talk shows? Twitch IRL? Let me go back to that last line. People do a much wider range of things on camera for YouTube, which makes them more vulnerable to being abused or taken advantage of. Why? Literally, why? If anything, that makes them less likely to be taken advantage of. If you're doing like a slow-mo demonstration of something, you're going to be more likely to focus on whatever the demonstration is than whatever Twitch alerts is going to... Or, let me actually go... Streamlabs would be the one that would take advantage of this one. If you're doing a cooking show on YouTube, you're going to be more than likely to be focused on that. Or your drawing. Or whatever. Or your talk show. Lord knows, Unjust Banana currently just did 3 1-bit cheers. I normally don't shout that out during the talk show because I'm more focused on the talk and the ranting. It's normally not until after that I even comment on that. With the exception of just now to use as an example. I tore the-verge asunder during CES for their stupid, insane, asinine awards that they awarded during CES. That made no sense and just made my brain hurt the more and more I looked at it. It is writers like Vlad Savov is the reason why such asinine comments end up on The Verge. I do wonder how many people actually go to the Verge anymore to actually find good intellectual commentary or articles. Because, I mean, this guy clearly just went, watched the press release, and then wrote up this article. No more came out of it. Alright, we're going to move on from that. I can't be angry at the Verge all day. That's not healthy. Instead, let's talk about the mythical unicorn. So, first things first. When it comes to PC building, there are there's more than two. But when it comes to building, there are two core categories of CPUs. There is what's called the mainstream CPU and the enthusiast CPU. Most people know them as, in the Intel side, Intel Socket 1150 and Intel Socket 2011 V3. 95% of people, when they build on Socket 1150. Or whatever the current version of that socket is. Sometimes it's long ago, it was 1151, then it was 1155 for a while, then it was 1156, and blah, 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 blah. Currently it's 1150, unless I'm wrong, which is possible. And normally how it would work is that in the mainstream there would be Celeron at the very low end and Core i7 at the very high end. But then there'd also be like another 5 or 6 Core i7s in the high end, in the enthusiast line. And then occasionally someone would say, oh, there's going to be a Core i9 one day, hurdy-durdy-dur. And no one ever looks at them seriously. It's like, come on. That sounds dumb. Well, we have rumors now coming out that Skylake X, which is going to be your Socket 2011 processors, are going to be branded as Core i9 processors. I'm not going to lie. I don't know what to think about that. There's unfortunately not a whole lot of news. There's some leaks. Like, the base Core i9 is going to be a 3.5 gigahertz processor that boosts up to 4 gigahertz. And if I had to guess, it's probably going to be like some 8-core processor. At the top is going to be like a 14-core processor. Something crazy like that. But here's the key thing. If they're going to be doing this branding where the enthusiast line is Core i9, please have every single one of them be a Core i9. I can't even tell you how many times people have gotten confused because there are Core i7s that could go into two, where one Core i7 would fit into a motherboard and then another Core i7 wouldn't, from the same generation. Now, unfortunately, Unjust Banana in the chat actually goes, and none will offer much of an performance improvement. I don't know. The biggest problem is that all we have is base clocks and boost clocks for Skylake X. We don't have other details like how much does the architecture pose as an improvement, how much... more importantly, how many cores are there? What technologies are available? What level of boost is this going to be? I mean, we have the boost clock, but that's about it. We don't even know the nanometers. Unjust even just says, wait for 10 nanometers. We don't even know if it's 10 nanometers. It could be 10 nanometers. Although, honestly, waiting for lower nanometers is almost worthless at this point. You're kind of getting to the point where what are you going to gain from that? So, there you have it. Core i9s might be coming. So what's AMD's answer to that? Well, AMD's answer is actually trying for once. Yep. AMD's actually going to try. So, I actually don't mean that sarcastically. They are actually going to try. Let's actually go down the timetable for a minute. When Ryzen finally came out, they had the Ryzen 7, which was compared to Broadwell E, that's the enthusiast level parts. They had Ryzen 5, that was compared to current Skylake, or Kaby Lake. I can't remember what we're on right now. We're on Kaby Lake. That was compared to Kaby Lake, the i7s and the i5s. And then Ryzen 3 is going to compare to the lower ends of the Kaby Lakes. And kind of overall on the board, it was... Those Ryzens were worse at gaming by a slight amount, by like 10%. And they were really good at workstation-style applications, such as rendering movies, such as running streaming software like OBS, and so on and so forth. So Ryzen, and keep in mind, unlike the Core i9, which is a rumor, this isn't. AMD has announced there is going to be a Ryzen 9 class of CPU. Starting at 10 cores, 12 threads, 10 cores, 20 threads at 3.1 gigahertz, going all the way up to 16 cores, 32 threads at 3.5 gigahertz. All of which actually including features that the higher-end Intel processors include, such as quad-channel DDR4 RAM support and 44 PCI Express lanes. What does 44 PCI Express lanes mean? That means you can have 4 graphic cards in SLI or Crossfire working as one without any sort of bottleneck. If you currently were to take a standard Kaby Lake processor and do 4 graphic cards, you lose roughly 40% of the bandwidth on each card because they only get half as many PCI Express lanes as they're supposed to. With 44, you can give each of them the 8 lanes that they need, though they prefer, I think it's like 12. Even though they're supposed to get 16, but they only take 12. But they're happy as a clam on 8. The moment you bring them down to 4, they're sad. They are sad cards at that point. But with 44, you could do something crazy like that. Plus quad channel. Meaning that 4 sticks of RAM will operate as one and connect with each other before having to use a new bank. in addition to just a disgusting amount of cores and threads. Now, there is one downside to it. These chips, these behemoths of chips, supposedly will take a 4094 pin package. So they're going to be going into a much higher end socket, roughly almost close to double the number of pins that the current Intel ones use. So it should be a huge CPU socket, in theory, unless they're lying about the pin count. Well, not lying's a bad word. Misrepresenting what the pin package means. That someone could be internal. So, 16 cores. Now, granted, 16 cores does top what Intel does in the high-end gaming market. The highest that Intel goes in the high-end gaming market is a 10-core processor for like $1,700. That's the Core i7 Black. That's the processor nobody buys. For obvious reasons. It's way too expensive. But if you were to look into the Xeons, what Intel sells to the servers, which is where you do need massive core counts, Intel wins right now with a 22-core processor. AMD has an answer for that too. AMD, back in the day, had the Opteron processor. This is what AMD uses in servers. Intel uses Xeons, AMD has Opteron. Opteron is dead. AMD now is selling their server processors as EPYC. EPYC. And that tops out at 32 cores. 32 cores, 64 threads. Damn. And on top of that, that's considered a system on a chip, so it's going to have some form of graphics already built into it, which is going to help quite a bit. Now, there's a few other things that AMD went ahead and did with this chip. Remember how I said that the Ryzen 9 had 44 PCI Express lanes? EPYC, their server chip, has 128 PCI Express lanes on one chip. That means if you're using a dual socket board, which most servers do, that is 64 cores, 128 threads, and 256 PCI Express lanes. Now, there are a few things to be a little skeptical about. For starters, the benchmarks they were using is comparing kind of a lower end Intel i5 or Intel Xeon, because they're showing benchmarks here about how their chip completed rendering in 33.7 seconds and the Intel one completed in 37.2. So, just about 5 seconds faster. But again, it's using... I don't know which EPYC processor they're using, primarily because I don't even know what the lists of their EPYC CPUs will be. But I do know they're using a fairly mid-range, kind of middle-tier Xeon to compare against. So they could be using their top dog against Intel's middle dog. And it could be that Intel's still going to win here. At this point, it's once again going to be an issue of time will tell. But of course, you're probably not going to care about what's going to happen in servers or workstations. No. Unless you're insane and plan on building a $7,000 gaming rig. Unjust Banana in the chat asks, will this run Doom? Yes. If a watch can run Doom, a supercomputer part will also run Doom. Let's move over to a different AMD announcement, because, good lord, AMD had all the announcements. AMD did also announce Ryzen mobile APUs that have both the Zen CPU cores, that's what Ryzen's based on, and on-die Vega graphics. Vega is the codename given to AMD's next generation GPU. If you'll recall, to a week or two ago, I ranted on AMD because they went ahead and when they released their new RX 580, it was still based on last generation's GPU, which just turned out to be an enormous letdown. It does apparently appear to be that the new mobile CPUs will have newer, more advanced graphics. Now, does this mean that you can go get a quad-core based Ryzen laptop and have it perform as well as, say, an Xbox One? I don't know. The unfortunate thing is that, although it's nice to see this announcement come out, that there are going to be laptop parts, and these laptop parts are going to, in fact, have the most modern graphics that AMD can muster. Unfortunately, I don't know how well Vega's going to run. Nobody knows, except for AMD. But if it does run fairly well, all of a sudden, those kind of mid-range laptops where the AMD badge used to be the sign of death could mean, a halfway decent $500 gaming laptop. Or a $400 gaming laptop. That hopefully won't run Windows 10s. Hopefully run a real operating system. I can't help myself. I really can't. And yeah, I could go through the entire article that PCPer has, but it's basically going to be just what I said. We still don't have all the details. We wish we had all the details. But it's basically going to look like, we're going to be seeing a lot of 4-core, 8-thread parts. And supposedly with Vega GPUs with up to 1,024 cores, which is, fairly mid-range. And that wouldn't be half bad. It is once again an issue where time will tell. And then also in a related story, AMD has in fact confirmed, and it's now actually out, that AMD is going to, this year, release a real graphic card. And they're going to call it the brand new Radeon Vega Frontier Edition. So this sounds great, right? You know, we have a confirmation. We have a new Vega card. It's going to be out. I mean, it's got to be powerful, right? I mean, they're already showing it. They're showing in the graph. It's 50% faster than the Fury X. It is 3 times faster in FPS than the Fury X. And is 4 times the memory. So it's going to be amazing, right? Yes and no. On one hand, yes, Vega is going to be a good improvement over what they had before. Here's the downside, though. This is going to be marketed by the looks of it as a workstation card. Because they're really pushing out what it can do for machine learning, advanced visualization, VR workloads, and game design workflows. It's actually being marketed kind of similar to the Titan cards, where it's a workstation class card without the certifications that can also game. So hopefully we'll see some real graphic cards using Vega GPUs that will actually be an affordable price. Please. Pretty please. Because I'm going to be really sad if the entire new generation is going to be this one super expensive Vega card, which, granted, I only assume is going to be super expensive, because last I checked, there was no price point actually listed on here. Yep, no price point listed. We have to wait until late June for what the price is going to be. I'd hate to see it just be this one expensive Vega card, and then a whole bunch of old Polaris cards that they just kind of want to limp along and resell. Because that'd be just as bad as Nvidia trying to make Fermi last forever. Which they only did for 1 year before killing it like they should have. Oh, I have a duplicate article in here, my bad. So, that finally concludes all of the AMD announcements. And fortunately, despite my ranting a bit on the Vega card, this is all great news. This is all fantastic news. For the longest time, Intel has just been running away with the CPU market. And finally, at long last, AMD is finally being able to not only compete with Intel, but put some pressure on Intel. Now, this article, I was really hoping that Regret could make it today, but alas, he couldn't. And that's the finger pointing between Microsoft and the NSA as to who was responsible for the massive ransomware outbreak I'm not going to repeat the entire shtick we had last week regarding the ransomware attack, but here's basically how it goes. The NSA discovered a vulnerability in Windows 10, and they wrote malware for it. It was used to gain access to a machine if needed, and go through to either steal data or lock up the machine. And it's basically how most malware goes when you're talking about state-sponsored hacking. Your goal is either to steal data or lock up the machine. Sometimes commandeer it, but you rarely want to do that because that leaves a nasty paper trail. Well, that malware leaked out of the NSA because everything is leaking out of everywhere nowadays. And some malicious black hat hackers went and used this vulnerability to make ransomware. This ransomware then spread across the entirety of the planet of Earth, mostly in Europe. And, it's basically how every malware worked. How every piece of ransomware worked. Lock up the machine, pay us some money, we let the machine go. Everyone's seen ransomware at some point. Usually it tries to be a bit more subtle than this one was. So now that brings us to today. Or rather 4 days ago, actually, which is when this was written. Microsoft is pointing at the NSA for letting this vulnerability even leak out. The NSA is pointing at Microsoft claiming, well, you should have patched it better. Who's right, who's wrong? I mean, somebody's got to be right in this, right? And someone's got to be wrong, right? In this case, they're both right. The NSA needed to keep better track and keep a better lock and key over their digital weapons. In this case, an old exploit. And Microsoft really should be a bit more adamant about getting the updates out. And already, Microsoft is pretty adamant. Lord knows. Everyone gets frustrated every time it says, hey, you need to restart for updates. But in the end, the real fault that this attack happened is the user. I hate to blame the rest of us on this, but it kinda is our fault. Not you, though. Not you over there. In fact, not any of you who actually was up to date. The exploit that was used was actually patched way back in March. The only people who were affected by the ransomware were those who didn't update recently. Which unfortunately was a lot of businesses, a lot in the healthcare industry. And now I'm just getting back into what I said last week. But it's an important lesson to teach. Update frequently. If you're really paranoid, maybe wait a few days, see if there's any reports coming out about a recent update stopping this or that from working. Because you never know. But you also never know when that one little patch is going to be the one thing that stops some random black hat hacker out in the middle of Nigeria or Pakistan or wherever from locking up your entire computer and demanding $300. You never know. You should be cautious. So let's shift gears again. Let's go back to graphic cards. Because graphic cards are fun. You know what else is fun? Small graphic cards. Cheap graphic cards. Graphic cards that can be used in small little itty bitty projects. They are fun. I don't care what you think. You're wrong. They are fun. Can I play Overwatch on it? Probably not. Well, what good is it? I don't know. I kid, though. They are actually useful for a whole lot of things. Graphic cards like these, the one I'm talking about in this case is the GT 1030. The GT series of NVIDIA graphic cards normally is kind of listed as the low-end, quote, not for gaming graphic cards, unquote. These are the ones that are more targeted at media use, at maybe light gaming, or just adding some extra graphic horsepower to something that just never could. Alright, so if they're not for gaming, what good are these cards? Well, these are the sort of things that back when I was refurbishing computers could breathe new life into a machine that was obsolete. In fact, last week, we were talking about a possible Microsoft update to Windows 10 that could, in fact, brick a whole lot of computers because it would make the user interface much prettier, much more graphic intensive, and actually you start requiring the GPU to do a lot more work. Now, if you're running the latest Skylake processor, or Kaby Lake, or whatever the heck we're running on nowadays, you've probably got enough GPU power to handle it. But what if you're not? What if you're on Haswell? Or Ivy Bridge? Or Sandy Bridge? You've got enough CPU power to handle it, but that integrated GPU might not be enough. That's where this guy can come in. Or heck, let's say you go ahead and you build up that new Ryzen rig for streaming. But then you discover that, oh wait, your broadcasting software does take up GPU in order to do silly things like generator transparency or a green screen effect. Well, here you are. Cheap alternative, plenty of GPU horsepower, just don't expect this GPU to max out anything. Well, maybe something old. But if you're going to ask me, can I pop this into a brand new rig and can I run Overwatch? Not at max settings. You probably could at minimum. You can get away with it. That's about it. This card, on the other hand, the GTX 1050 Ti, that you could play Overwatch on at halfway decent settings, though not maxed out. And this is also one that, this particular one, the Eno 3D single slot GTX GTX 1050 Ti graphic card. This one actually is fascinating for all the right reasons. Because of the way it works, it does not require an external power supply connector. So in that old business computer you just found, you can just pop it in and it's going to work. It's single slot, so you don't have to worry about, does this random $50 rig I found have the space for it? You can just pop it in. It's 75 watts. It's not going to strain your little 300 watt power supply that's in your low end rig. And in a world where we have more than enough CPU power to do just about anything, unless you're doing something crazy like streaming, you can easily turn that E-machine you have laying around, or some old Dell Optiplex running a Core i3, into a fairly functional gaming rig. Then again, it's not going to max anything out. But, you know, this could very easily be the $150 card to add to a $100 rig. And for $250, you're in the PC gaming market now. A market that is normally laughed at for having an absurdly high cost of entry. And in the grand scheme of things, worth it. That's going to do it for me today, guys. Thank you all for listening today. If you want to hear more of my banter, you can always find me live, twitch.tv/eagle_falcon for my game streams. Otherwise, I'll see y'all again next week at 3 o'clock Central Time. Hopefully, my co-host will be with me next week, whether it be Regret or someone else. Take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.